Welcome to If the Walls Could Talk in Buffalo. Don, how you doing?
Not bad. Yourself, Josh?
Doing great. We had a lot of great feedback, a lot of interested parties in our series about Kelly to Allen. So we figured kind of in the dead of summer here, it's a quiet time, downtime before training camp, we'd do another one and we'd go through the 25 most interesting receivers from Andre Reed all the way through the end of Don's tenure. And we're just going to call it Stephon Diggs with a little bit of poetic license as to the years.
It's interesting though. It wasn't an automatic. Like we knew we had said we were going to continue on this position thing, but it wasn't as if it was a slam dunk that we were going to do receivers. Like we thought maybe running backs, receivers, almost kind of like.
Frankly, there's more marquee names at running back.
There would be, and I just think it's maybe signifies there's been a paradigm shift in terms of receivers now being considered more. It's become more of a passing game. I mean, maybe it's just that there aren't that many Adrian Petersons or
and the Bills
Derrick Henry's around. I don't know.
The Bills' focus changed too. Think about how many high running backs they picked, and when you don't have a quarterback, you pick a receiver or you pick a running back, right? And so it also tells the story of the Bills.
It does, yeah. When you drill it down to the team too, right?
Right. So before we do that, we did have a couple of just loose ends from the quarterback, topic. Quarterback discussion, a couple of things that my guy Joe Pinzone in New York City pointed out and kind of asked. The JP Lossman situation where 2007 he got hurt. There was a whole question of his contract and whatever, and you felt like it's still, even if he was hurt, whatever, it wouldn't have been based upon a contract renewal or incentives.
Yeah, I still feel that way, and especially if other players were speculating in the locker room. Again, I totally believe that a player would have told Chris Borton said, "Hey, we think the team's doing him dirty by not playing him because he would earn these incentives." But still, even pre CBA, a first round quarterback is, you can't use this word, but it's still kind of slotted in terms of where he was picked and what the player before and after him made.
You brought up the C word before we went on air,
and you're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to say slotted or the union. If an agent heard you say that, they would be on the phone instantly to the union saying collusion. You can't. What it suggests is that we're talking to other teams. Hey, how much you're going to pay your guy? Oh, okay, good. I won't pay mine that much too. You just can't do it.
There was a gentleman's agreement, kind of like an unwritten.
Well, there's phone records that the league tells you we will subpoena phone records, and if we see that you were talking to this team, email obviously too. You don't want to do that. We will look into it. We will subpoena all of your correspondence, and you don't want that.
Sure, got it. The other one he brought up, and you kind of jogged your memory, and maybe there is something to it, is the 2016 Tyrod Taylor injury with the contract, and they benched him because if he got hurt, his contract was guaranteed. What do you remember about that?
Well, I think that, again, if it sounds to me, and I'd have to see which games that maybe he didn't play. I know he didn't play in London, but I thought he came back. Tyrod played in Seattle in 16. He had a good game, really good game in Seattle on a Monday night.
Would there have been something where his contract would have been guaranteed if he got hurt?
There is such thing as a full guarantee, but then there is also partial guarantees. That it could be guaranteed for skill, guaranteed for injury. In other words, skill is kind of a tough one. If they just say, "Hey, we don't think you can do this anymore," and they cut you, you still get paid if you got a skill guarantee.
Okay.
Same thing with an injury. If you get hurt, you can't play. The rest of the year, you're gonna still make your full contract instead of just part of it. So there could have been, if the team was out of the playoffs and thought, what's the point of playing him? And in that case, maybe management went to GM and head coach and said, "Look, your choice. You want to play. And we say you always want to win, but understand the consequences. If he does get hurt, this will affect our cap in this way." And
that's what happens in the NBA all the time. They shut guys down. Before the end of the season or before the end of the contract. So there might have been something.
Could have been something to it. I'm not suggesting there is, but I wouldn't rule it out either.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So that kind of puts a bow on our two-part episode about the quarterbacks. Hopefully everybody enjoyed that. We're gonna dive into the receivers now. And just to remind everybody, Don was an intern in '88, started full-time in '90, became the director of football administration in 2005. 5.
Yeah.
Okay. And went all the way through the end of the 2016 season. until the Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott era started. So we're just going to kind of look at what we figured were the 25 most interesting. Doesn't mean the best.
Yep.
We're going to do it in chronological order, and most of my research here came from Pro Football Reference. Hopefully, cross your fingers, they were right on everything.
It should be noted also that you were with the team in the mid to late 90s up till 2000.
Yep. Yeah, I got some observations and stories too, of course. So let's start with an all-timer. I'm gonna introduce this receiver. I think you've heard of him, Andre Reed. 85 to 99. Yeah, sounds familiar. Do you remember meeting him for the first time? He was clearly an established receiver at the time when you got there in 88. By 90, he's an all-pro. He's number one receiver on a Super Bowl team. Just give me your we haven't really talked very much about him on the show.
No, it's funny we haven't. And I think my first observation about just meeting him personally would have been in Fredonia in training camp. But looking at him in shorts and a t-shirt, the guy was built like a safety.
Yeah.
He was strong.
Yeah, he was bigger. That's right. I would agree with you. In the locker room, he had a presence that a lot of the other receivers did not.
Yeah,
that's fair to say.
And because of it, he not only looked that way, but he would, he'd go over the middle and bounce off, get hit by a linebacker or a safety and just hang on to the ball and make moves. And I just, I guess I was struck by the fact that, looking at it, he came from Kutztown, a Division II school in the Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference. And my daughter played lacrosse at Edinburgh. So we played a game at Kutztown, and I remember going there. I think I told you the story.
Yeah.
I ran into Mark Kelsel's son. It was our son's roommate coming off there. And hey, is there anything here that features Andre Reed? He's like, oh, yeah, go in the main lobby. And sure enough, there's this huge thing of him and John Mobley, two NFL stars but Andre made the Hall of Fame. I don't think Mobley did.
Did he strike you as someone who always had the small school chip on his shoulder?
He had a chip. He just took the words right out of my mouth. For whatever reason, maybe it was being a small school player. Yeah. He didn't like people not if he suspected they weren't telling him the truth. He would come back at him. He had an attitude that made it work for him on the field.
Was he personable? Was he friendly off the field?
Yeah, he was friendly.
Because obviously there's Jim Kelly, there's from that era, there's the big four, right? There's Jim Kelly, there's Bruce Smith, there's Thurman Thomas, and there's Andre Reed. Mm-hmm. That's the big four, the Mount Rushmore of the 90s Bills, whatever. People know plenty about Jim Kelly. People know Thurman still lives here, is beloved. Bruce is, the best of the four, probably the best Bill of all time. And Bruce was Bruce, and we'll talk about him another time.
Yeah, right.
Andre is kind of the quiet, maybe misunderstood or, underrated. I don't know how you would describe him. Like, he's in the Hall of Fame. He was the engine that really helped make the team go. But everybody, if you ranked him in order, I would venture to guess most people would say Andre was the fourth best Bill, which is crazy. Which is crazy.
Wow,
which is crazy. But right,
yeah, he was the fourth of the group that to make the Hall of Fame.
Which is wild.
Of the players, that we're talking about. That's just
did it feel that way? Like in the building during the Super Bowl years? Like was he as revered? Was he as respected? Was he as Bruce, Jim, and Andre? Or at Bruce, Jim, and Thurman?
It's hard to say. I mean, he was right up there. I give him a lot of credit because he had so many. Well, he did have the continuity, obviously, with Jim and Frank throwing to him. But he just did it all. He did the underneath stuff. He was a deep threat. He was a great run after the catch guy, and super productive. And but maybe for having that chip on his shoulder, he didn't put himself out there as much as maybe a star player would. And he was a star.
Right. Yeah. I wouldn't have ever called him like a fan favorite. Daryl Talley, like there were just forward-facing, friendlier players on that team. Like as a kid growing up, I loved Andre Reed, but I cheered for Andre Reed. I loved Thurman Thomas. Like Thurman Thomas was my guy. Bruce Smith was my guy. Andre just always seemed a little distant. Just even as a fan, as a kid, like media, it was a little prickly, not unfriendly, whatever else, but he just always seemed aggravated. Frankly,
it didn't seem hard to get under skin, but I think he made it work.
Sure, and your interactions with him were always
they were always good,
pleasant.
Absolutely.
So I remember at the end, and Joe brought this up to me at the end of his career when they let all three of them go on
Yeah.
that day. He definitely struck me as the most bitter
Yep.
of the three. It took him a while to then come back into the fold. Do you remember when he was released? Do you remember? Obviously, the cap was what it was, and they let go all three of them at the same time. But I mean, Thurman went to the Dolphins, which was just awful.
We shall not speak of
right,
that
and
here.
Bruce ended up in Washington, whatever.
Still productive.
But Andre seemed the most angry of the three.
Well, yeah, and that's where I would say that from what I heard from people that knew him better, and I knew him some. It's not like I kept in contact with him really after that until he came back. He came back as a training camp coach. But what you heard in the media was that. But like, I don't know because quite honestly, I didn't see him anymore.
Right.
I just maybe that's
and maybe he was just upset and kind of pissed off because that's just kind of how he was, right?
Yeah.
When he came back into the fold, training camp coach, like how did that go? Like, is he now, as much part of the alumni infrastructure as all the other guys?
I think so. When he came back as a training camp coach, I want to say it was Rex Ryan's first year, and we were playing a preseason game in Cleveland. I'm positive it was Cleveland. And we were all kind of in the lobby, not knowing what to do. Preseasons, you don't play the next day until at night, and it's preseason. So you have a lot of flexibility to, players still have an 11 o'clock curfew, but and we were in the lobby and said, hey, we're all going to this sports bar over here. Come on, he saw me, saw some other guys, Paul Lancaster, let's go. And we sat at this huge table, and man, he was just holding court. He was so happy and to be back, and just.
So it had been quite a while since he was back with the organization in any kind of capacity, right?
Yeah, that training camp coach gig is a pretty sweet deal for those guys. They're with the team for like 3 weeks.
Is it free? Do they work for free? Or
do they get paid? I think they get a stipend. They get taken, they're on the road, but they legitimately can say they have some legitimate coaching on experience that they can talk about, because they're right there working with whatever position there is. Like we had Kevin Mawai, center
from the Jets.
We had players from other teams, but it was nice when one of your own came back into the fold. And Andre was like the best example of that. I remember.
Did you watch him coach at all?
Yeah, a little bit.
If you're the wide receiver coach at the time, the position coach, it's got to be a little difficult, right? Like there's Andre Reed coaching the guy. Like not as if he's going to step on your toes or want to take your job, whatever. But that's got to be difficult in some ways to have Andre Reed there. And if you were never a player in the NFL or whatever else, like I can imagine that would be maybe a little not threatening, but just humbling.
It could be. Being on the receiving end of that, the player might think, all right, you're saying I should do this. I should be able to, get separation here. But, are we just assuming that I'm as physically gifted as you were?
Right.
Is it going to be as easy for me as you say it should be?
Right. So I'm gonna end some of these with a fun question for you. This is very obvious. Where Andre Reed ranks on the Bills wide receiver all-time yards list. It's very clear where he is on this list.
If it's not number one,
it is number one. Okay. Yeah, it's number one.
Yeah, right.
So we're going to move on, and we're going to move on to James Lofton. Clearly a Hall of Famer. His best years were not in Buffalo, but he was kind of that missing piece, which is kind of ironic with today. It kind of feels like he could, if DeAndre Hopkins for some reason ends up signing here, it would almost feel like the James Lofton piece to the offense, where he came into an offense that was already good. And he took the top off the defense, and he seemed to be the last link to make the K-gun go.
Yeah. I remember when he first came to the team, and I want to say he was cut like during the season by the Raiders at the time.
Was he, like when you met him, like in '89, was he already like going to be a Hall of Famer? Like, was it a big deal that he was coming here?
I think if his career had ended in that year, I would think he had the numbers to get in, but what surprised everyone was just how much he had left in the tank. And, he didn't have to adjust his game. He didn't have to, suddenly try to become a possession receiver. He was still a great deep threat.
Yeah, he was not a possession receiver at all. No, he was take the top off the defense guy.
Yeah, and that was at like 33 years old. And you look at him and you thought, holy cow! I mean, we were just talking about Andre Reed, but James Lofton looked like a deer.
He had long legs, right? He ran very smoothly and just very differently than a lot. And almost looked like he like galloped, right?
It did. And I think even maybe defenses that year and the next year in '90, they appeared to be underestimating him still, thinking he made a lost step, and he just hadn't.
How was he? As a person, was he on par with Bruce, Jim, Thurman, Andre, like in the locker room as a leader? Like, was he revered? How was he?
I think that makes it even more impressive how he came in and just blended. He didn't try to become another leader that I saw. He appreciated the chance that the Bills gave him to continue playing. And talk about chip on the shoulder. I think he wanted to show the Raiders and the rest of the league that he still was that same player.
Because he was one of the only non-homegrown guys,
right?
Major contributors. Almost everybody was drafted, brought up through the system. He was one of the only non-homegrown guys, on the Super Bowl teams.
Yeah, and he was so nice right away. Like, we had Paul McDonald, my guy I kind of broke into the league with back in like December. And I remember James Lawson came in the ticket office, according to Paul, and I don't remember this, but took like some sample hat that was going to be the next season's coaching hat and just took it. And it wasn't for sale, but then Paul took his credit card and they were chasing each other around the atrium in the building. And he's like, hey, I got your credit card.
Jokester, right?
Yeah, he was funny. Yeah.
And obviously does media now.
He's very good, right?
Revered, just seems like a kind of elder statesman for the league almost in a way. Do you remember him retiring? Was it mutual? Was it his decision? Do you remember?
He got released before the final Super Bowl, I believe.
Yeah,
I think
92. He was 89 to 92.
Yeah, 92. And then, he went on to play with, I think, the Rams and maybe the Eagles.
Yeah.
Wasn't quite as productive as he had been with us, but I don't, again, when he left, I didn't see him anymore. But I also didn't hear him go to the media and say, I can't believe it. He just was happy to still play. He had to be up to 36, 37 years old at that point.
Incredible career.
Yeah.
Truly incredible.
Yeah.
Where does he rank all time on Bills yardage for wide receivers? What's your guess?
8.
Close, 11.
8. Okay.
We'll move on to a guy who was on our show, Don Beebe.
Yeah.
Your guy there, 89 to 94.
Yeah.
We had a whole episode with him in our archives. I hope everybody will check it out if they haven't already.
They should.
Just give me a 1 or 2 minute overview. Obviously, everybody knows Leon Lett. Everybody knows the head on, the Cleveland game. Just as a person, as a guy in the locker room, like, what do you remember about Don?
Yeah. Regarding that, you say everyone knows about Leon Lett, everyone knows about the head, but he did tell us things in that podcast, if they want to go back.
For sure.
About those incidents that we didn't know.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, you did a great job of asking him questions. And when he won in Green Bay, I think you almost brought him to tears.
I almost got him.
Yeah, that was really good. No, he was very content just to be in the background, very, very soft spoken, just nice, polite, that kind of Midwestern, almost kind of like Woody from Cheers, but a lot smarter. A lot smarter.
Fastest person you've ever seen run on a field?
Yeah. That played for the Bills. I remember not being able to believe my eyes when I saw Michael Vick play and Dion.
When you were, I know you didn't go to practice a ton, but when you were at camp or when you were down at practice, like, he ran, like, him running must have been just something to see.
Yeah. And it, physically he was the polar opposite kind of James Lofton being that galloping deer.
Yeah.
He was like smaller, compact, but just whatever it was, however he did it, forget about it. No one was ever going to catch him if he got behind someone.
Woody from Cheers cracks me up.
But so much smarter,
right? Of course.
Yeah.
Where do you think Don ranks all time in Bills receiving yards?
All right,
for receivers.
All right, I'm going to go with 8 there.
14.
14, really? Okay.
14. It's amazing how some of these guys, different era, not as much passing back then.
Okay.
So he started in the 4th Super Bowl, right? It's hard because there's like the 3 receiver sets, whatever. But he was the number 2 guy or was Billy Brooks probably the number 2 guy for the 4th Super Bowl year,
Uh,
93?
good question. I think yeah, Brooks. Well, Andre was hurt a lot. No, it was 95. That's when Brooks had his amazing year. But
So Beebe was never the number 1 here, but he was considered like 2 or 3 most of the time he was here, right?
no less than 3. He said he felt like he would have been the 3 receiver in Super Bowl 25 and 90 had he not broken his leg at the end of the year.
Boy, him lining up with Lofton still at his end of his prime.
Oh,
wow.
Man.
Okay, the 4th person that we're going to talk about here is another former guest of the show, fan favorite. Everybody knows him, Steve Tasker.
Yeah.
86 to 99.
Yeah.
You hopefully you check out that show in the archives too. Clearly, he still does work with the Bills, won Bills Live. Is there anything about Steve that hasn't been talked about? Any interactions you had with him, kind of behind the scenes? At your time, was he around? Like in the 2010s, like when you were director of football administration, was he in the building? Was he around quite a bit?
He came back. The team hired him to be, I don't know what the official position was, but the marketing department was allowed to hire him to be kind of an ambassador for the team. I mean, he's just so well spoken. Every time I hit the radio, if he happens to be on, I listen, and just hearing 10, 15 seconds of him break down, he just breaks things down so well. But when he was a player, I found he had a bit of an edge to him too.
Prickly?
I wouldn't say quite prickly. I would say that like maybe stature wise, he and Beebe kind of looked alike, but
they couldn't been any more different personality wise, right?
Right.
Even in our interview, it was very different.
Yeah, Steve was type A, and when you look at what he had to do to be the first downfield, to bust through the wedge and get there, and how
he played angry.
He played angry.
Yeah,
that's a good way to do it.
He played angry.
Yep.
And if you're a gunner and you're going to be the best special teams player of all time, you kind of have to. And if you're 5, what is he? Is he taller than you?
He's 5'9", probably.
Yeah. So I mean, if you saw him at the supermarket and you didn't know if he goes to Houston, Texas right now, or he goes to Phoenix, Arizona, and he walked through a supermarket, no one would know that he's a borderline NFL Hall of Famer.
Unless they are one of those people from the Bills fans that move to those places.
But if you're an old lady in Phoenix, Arizona, she wouldn't say, "Oh man, that guy must have played NFL football," right? Like that would. He just was so unassuming.
Didn't you say your mother-in-law?
Oh, my mom. That was her favorite.
I'm sorry, your mom.
Yep, my mom's favorite player of all time was Steve.
Yeah.
Well, just look how cute he was. Like that's what she would say. Well, it was him, and then before him, it was Joe Montana.
Oh.
But that was because of Joe Montana's backside, which I was always reminded of. And any big 49er, he just has such a nice rear end, Joshua. And I'm like, oh my God, Mom, like enough. I'm like 11 and I'm watching Cowboys 49ers, and all my mom wants to talk about is Joe Montana's
I think Madden never talked about that.
No, not in the same. He might have talked about like his throwing mechanics. My mom was not discussing his throwing mechanics. Believe me when I tell you that. So where do you think Steve ranks on the Bills' all-time yardage list for receivers?
I think this is an unfair question.
Of course,
it's just factual,
and it's regular season because looking at this and getting this number, you realize a couple of his big games were in the playoffs.
That's right. Yeah, 95 was such a fun year because Andre got hurt, which was bad. Steve got to play receiver. Jim Kelly finally got his wish, and he was incredible.
Yeah,
like he just I'm sure Jim had to just be smiling, like, yeah, this is what I've been telling you guys all about. He's unstoppable.
Yes,
and you're right. He had big playoff games like against the Steelers,
Miami,
good regular season game against Miami, whole bunch of touchdowns, but obviously you could surmise that he would have been doing that all those previous years, but the team didn't need him to do it.
No.
They needed him to. I wish there was a way to quantify what the opponent's starting field position would have been with Tasker out there and with him not.
Sure, he probably 5 yards every.
That was his value.
Interesting. Where do you think he ranks? Just throw a number out there. 35.
Okay. All right. I was going to say worse.
Yep.
50. So
35th all time.
That means nothing in terms of what he was as a Buffalo Bill. But okay, we'll go along with it.
Right. Next one, Bill Brooks, another person who came on our show.
Yeah.
So he was there from 1992 to 1995. He was one of the Bills' first major marquee free agent signings, right?
He was. Yeah. He was already when he left the all-time leading receiver for the Colts, but it wasn't as if he made his money, being a deep burner. He was that quintessential possession receiver.
Right.
And it was feasible to think that it was worth investing in him because he could continue to do that even at a later age.
Right. Do you have any? We had him on the show. His interview is exactly what he was as a person and as a player. Just real professional. Real solid. Not flashy in any way, shape, or form. But he didn't play that way either.
No, there was no what you saw. When we interviewed him, that's exactly how he was in the building. Just so mindful of saying the right thing or not saying the wrong thing. And, he says he had a great experience here. He had great camaraderie with the guys. And I totally believe him. But at the same time, the locker room, as we've talked about, is a sanctuary. And you see guys feeling a lot more comfortable to say things, do things that they would never do.
Show things. Yeah.
Yeah. But even in the locker room, Brooks was still that same just ultimate pro.
Yes. Very buttoned up.
Very.
And I mean, you need a couple of those guys on the team with the big personalities and egos. That was like the 1993 Bills. Like there was a lot of egos and personalities on that team. You need a couple of those like head down worker guys, that are just not going to rock the boat. Just, come to work every day and do their job.
Yeah, and that's what impressed me a lot about him, because in '95, I remember it seemed ominous. The team was having him return punts in the fourth quarter of a preseason game. And I thought, that's usually what happens to a guy before he gets cut. But still, there was like a youth movement. There were guys been drafted like Russell Copeland, Justin Armour, a few other guys. And after practice, you would see Brooks working one-on-one with them, just trying to teach him tricks. And I'm like,
it's a good dude.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like from where I was that he was probably training his replacement in the next week. Yeah. But we brought that up with him, and he said, no, I wanted us to get better. He didn't talk about his own speculation about whether or not he'd make the team, but it was just impressive to watch. Ryan Lindell was on our show. And great guy. It was just funny though how he flat out admitted that when they bring another kicker in on a tryout and he was out there, he would secretly, after the guy missed.
Yeah, human nature. I'd be cheering for the dude to miss every kick.
Exactly. I was so glad he admitted that, because it was
for sure. Yeah. Where do you think he ranks all time?
I'm gonna say 10.
21.
Okay.
21. Interesting. I would have put him higher. I would have thought he was higher.
I'm getting worse and worse.
That's okay. I wouldn't have done well with some of these two. Right. Our next guy is an obvious place on the list. I'm going to make it one of my personal missions this year. Every show we have, in terms of if his name ever comes up, he needs to be on the Wall of Fame. Like he needs to be on the Wall of Fame 5 years ago. Eric Moulds.
Oh yeah.
1996 through 2005. Crossed over when I was there. Obviously, when you were there. First round pick, Mississippi State. The 96 season when he was returning kicks must have been a terrifying prospect for the opposition. Imagine trying to tackle him like coming down on a kickoff. He was good at it too. Yeah. Right away. It was kind of weird that 96 season they needed him on offense, but I don't know if he was quite ready yet for the whole playbook and to get integrated quickly, because that offense it struggled down the stretch.
Yeah. It was odd because he was so heralded as a first round pick. And I remember, we couldn't wait to see him, be that receiver that we watched all the highlights of him in college. But he spent most of the time returning kicks, and he had some big ones. Yeah. But it was still like, he was brought here, drafted to do more than that. Right. And
they could have used, like I said, they could have used him in that 96 season. The offense was not explosive. The defense carried them to the playoffs, and then obviously to that Jacksonville loss. Yeah. What do you, we had Naaman Roosevelt and Drew Haddad on, and they talked about Drew talked about what a physical freak Eric Moulds is. And I think everybody knows like physically how strong he was and how impressive he was. How about like as a player, as a leader, just a guy around the building? What were your impressions of him?
Yeah, it took him a while. You're right. It was his physical stature. We talked about Andre Reed being that guy. Eric Moulds took that up a notch. And, when you see video games that they make and they have the receiver, like he would have been the perfect model to make this like superhero receiver from. But he didn't, as far as I saw, It took him a while to assert himself. I think he was an extremely hard worker, and I think he thought, I will lead by example in that way, the way I train, the way
It was still Andre Reed's wide receiver room until he left, right? Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. But Moulds, I don't know, he just kept getting better and better and better. I think in that 98 year with Flutie, man, he was just unstoppable. He just had, it seemed like a 50-yard touchdown here. And he just was, all right, there we go. 98, 3 years in, here's the guy we thought we were drafting. And then he just continued.
I felt like the 98 to 2000, when I was there, when you were there, I felt he was probably the best player on the team.
You can make that case.
It was the ending of Bruce Thurman and Andre. They were the best career, but obviously. But at the time, like the 2000 season, Eric Moulds was our best player.
Yeah.
It was either him or Sam Coward or Ted Washington, but it was Eric Moulds.
Yeah, Moulds was we've had people, we've interviewed some media before, as you know, of course I did. But it's funny, Moulds is very well regarded and remembered by on teams that were after those Super Bowl years. That
so my guy Joe was curious about his leaving Buffalo. Mm-hmm. Did it get a little contentious? The whole Mike Mularkey thing and J.P. Lossman. Like, how do you remember? What do you remember about that?
It did. It gave us a bad feeling around the building that we just kept hearing that Eric Moulds was not happy. And he was in his 10th year.
Was it about the quarterback play?
Well, it could probably, but he wasn't getting the ball as much. He got a little bigger. I wouldn't say like he looked like a tight end.
Okay,
quite,
right. I do remember that.
But he got whether it was intentional or not, and that might have cost him a little bit of speed. But he was still great. And then he went to Houston, I believe, and.
So was it money related when he left? Do you remember, or was it just time for a change? Was everybody just kind of sick of each other?
I think so. I think he just felt like he wasn't getting the ball as much, and he just wanted a chance to play. I think he thought the team was in transition, which they were. I was like 4 or 5 years in. It just he didn't see quarterback play being what it should be. And
after he left, how long until he, kind of became part of like the alumni? Did the bitterness last?
Yeah, I think it did.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it lasted quite a while. But I mean, eventually he came back, from what I understand, to be, all in again with the team. And all players have to know that. I mean, John Elway, he retired after 2 Super Bowls. So that's a fairy tale. Endings just don't happen like that.
You're listening to two guys right now who went on their own post-Bills journey career with bitterness. It just sometimes it happens, and most things don't end well.
Nope.
Or they wouldn't end.
Yeah, you're right. And football is just so physically demanding, and so the rosters, the 1 to 53, the amount of talent that they have. And the money is real, the cap is real, and just these things all have to be factored in. It just often doesn't end well, and it didn't for him, but he came back into the fold.
If you were forced to make a choice to put one player, one of these two on the Wall of Fame, and it could only be one, is it Eric Moulds or is it Kyle Williams?
On the Wall of Fame. I mean, the easy answer is they should both be on there.
Yeah, if you had to pick one. Because I think those are the two most obvious next candidates, right?
Yeah. I mean, Aaron Schobel's number 2 in sacks of all time on the team, by a pretty good margin. But man,
the answer is Eric Moulds.
I'll yield to you because
that's my. He's my guy. I
love
looking
at rankings. I don't know.
Yeah, he's number 2 all time.
Okay,
in receiving yards.
There you go.
So I think it's criminal at this point that he's not on the Wall of Fame. He was such a big part of the team for so long. Lofton is not.
He's not. Okay,
no.
He's in the Hall of Fame.
He's in the Hall of Fame.
Not in the Bills Wall
which
of Fame.
Which is obviously a big honor.
Yeah.
Next guy, Quinn Early,
another
free agent pickup, New Orleans.
New Orleans, yeah, he was a big signing, big free agent signing.
96 to 98.
Yep.
Kind of filled in that gap when Billy Brooks left.
I was just going to say he was a continuation of Billy Brooks in so many ways. I think the team, one reservation they might add about Brooks, but maybe Brooks helped early in this way is, they were dome guys. They played half their games in perfect conditions under a dome. But Billy Brooks showed he could play in any kind of weather. Early was that quintessential professional guy too, and it was almost just like I don't know that he was quite as productive as Billy Brooks was. I think you're about to tell me that, but he picked up exactly where Brooks left off in terms of being that consummate professional. He was a great dresser. Like he would wear a suit and tie and just look like the suits were. I can't imagine
on the plane.
Yeah, I can't imagine how much they cost.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So a free agent back then, a guy like Billy Brooks, a guy like Quinn Early coming in when the organization was still really small, mid 90s, was the red carpet rolled out? Do you remember like the free agent visit? Jim Jeffcoat was another guy who came in, got signed. What was it like when you brought a free agent to One Bills Drive in like 1995?
Yeah, I mean, he was a March signing, meaning as soon as the free agency started, he was A-lister guy that the team was targeting.
The staff didn't line the tunnel and clap like the Drew Bledsoe.
Oh my gosh,
it wasn't like the scene in Rudy when they come down the tunnel, he clapping for him the last day of practice. But like, were you? I know your role was obviously much less in the 90s, but like on the day the guy came, like there wasn't that much to show him back then.
Not really
in the mid 90s. Like the facility clearly wasn't anything like it is today.
They would take him to dinner somewhere at Buffalo. You feature the great food. Everyone we have on, we ask about their favorite restaurants, and you can just almost see them salivating, talking about some of their favorite dishes at restaurants. So you do that. You take them with the head coach. Usually, I'm sure, I don't know this for sure, but like Andre would have gone for dinner, maybe throw him in. But Andre, hey, man, we need you.
Sure.
You're gonna.
It's probably very little time spent at the stadium.
Yeah, how are they going to cover both of us? And this is the place to be. But then they'd go back to the stadium and see it, and then just talk. And they were only allowed to be like Early would have been a guy that probably had other visits lined up, so he would only have been there for 12 to 18 hours and gone. But obviously the team won him. And
private plane back then for a guy like him, you think?
The private plane got used once or twice a year, so he would have been probably on a private jet.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. Where do you think he ranks all time?
16.
27. So you were right. Bill Brooks had more yards as a Bills receiver than Quinn Early, which doesn't surprise me all that much. Another one of my guys that I was intimately involved with, Peerless Price.
Yeah.
He's a character now. He was a character. 2 stints with the Bills, right?
Yep.
Okay. So his whole tenure, 99 through 2007, you can tell me the years he wasn't there, where he left and then came back. 2nd round pick, Tennessee. Peerless Price loved Peerless Price. Peerless Price loves Peerless Price.
He loved himself some Peerless Price.
Yes.
He was flashy and cocky in a good way. He was hilarious.
Yes, and he was really not like cut out for Buffalo. He made it work. Yeah. But if you would have picked a receiver and a city, Peerless Price and Buffalo would not have gone together.
Nah, you would have thought Miami, LA, Dallas, flashy.
Even in college, when you look at highlights of him, he arms in the air. He was a huge deal at Tennessee. I mean, they won the national championship. So talk me through like your memories of him. You saying he's fun? Like you knew when he was in a room.
Yeah, I remember at the Christmas parties, and man, he was on the dance floor as soon as they started, all the way till the end of the night. Like he just wanted to be on that dance floor, trying to get everybody out there, and that's something I remember about him, and that just kind of personified.
Do you remember after 2002? So they were going to franchise him. Do you remember that whole kind of contention? That's why he left.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, was that? I mean, why did he come back then? Like
he came back, I think in 2005. Had a real good game. We talked about
because the 2002 season was when the offense went crazy with Bledsoe.
Yeah.
So you had him and Moulds, and that offense was clearly the best offense of the drought era.
Yeah, I mean,
but then he leaves.
I think he had 1,000 yards. Moulds had 1,000 yards, but they were going to pay Moulds, and I just think that it came down to, the franchise tag is to me. I never understood why a player wouldn't want to do that. You're going to be paid the average of the top 5 salaries at your position for 1 year.
But then there's no guarantee of
you got to perform.
Yeah.
True. It just seemed like it was always worth the gamble, but the agents think differently. They want that long-term contract, right away. But I remember I was sad to see him go because I think he was right in his prime there. But when he came back in 2005, he could still play. He came back a different person. He came back more suited for Buffalo.
Okay.
Just like
older.
Like he
just
care.
Older.
Yeah. He didn't whatever the party mode that he was always in, which didn't affect his play. But he came back. He was now that veteran receiver working with young guys, and that we had Lee Evans on, and his best game, of course, was where he had the 2 83-yard touchdowns in the first quarter. But a lot of people forget it was Peerless Price that won the game on the last play of the game, catching the ball, hanging on, tiptoe in the back of the end zone. And
do you feel like him leaving in 2002? You always talk about your thing is that it was never the offense and the defense good at the same time during the drought. Like I said, that 2002 offense was great.
Yeah.
And then,
really
Bledsoe's decline started with the 2003 season,
mm-hmm.
and you lose, Moulds and Peerless that year were like 1 and 1A receivers.
Yeah.
You lose 1A, it feels like that started the decline even of Drew Bledsoe.
Yeah. It was just between Bledsoe appearing to be not even less mobile. He was never mobile to begin with, but just kind of less aware in the pocket. I don't know. It's just he was being sacked too much.
Sure.
When it seemed like he should have been able to get rid of the ball. He had good receivers,
It's tough when you lose a weapon like that over money.
Yeah.
For nothing.
Yeah. No, agreed. It's just hard to keep the gang together sometimes, and the agents will always tell the player, your career is only this long. You got to get the money when you can, and even if that means looking elsewhere. And
that was obviously a little bit before your time in the negotiation. Where do you think he ranks all-time Bills?
17.
9. He had a couple of big seasons.
Yeah, he had 1,000 yards, over 1,000 yards in 2002.
Yeah,
right.
He had a couple big seasons. We're going to leave it there for part 1. Okay. That kind of brings us to the drought. Some of these guys went, into the drought, but kind of left it as all the players who, were on the team before the drought started.
Yep.
Part 2 will be all of the drought era receivers, and when Don was, more intimately involved with the decision-making process and being the director of football administration. Anybody from the 90s, 80s that you have a funny story anecdote about before we wrap this up that we did not mention? Brad, your guy Brad Lamb. Anybody else?
It's funny when you you mentioned Brad Lamb, but when we went to Super Bowl 28 in Atlanta, who was the player? We had another receiver who kept 6, I think, because Brad was returning kicks. And
Russell Copeland.
Nope.
Damon Thomas.
Nope.
Justin Armour.
Nope.
Chris Brantley.
No,
Jerry Reed. Oh, jeez.
We're talking 93. Oh, man. I wish I could remember his name. Doggone it. But he played some. I want to say it was like a Stanford.
Justin Armour?
Nope. I hate to do this. I stepped in this here.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, this player.
It's a bad story.
It's a great story if I can remember his name. Here's what we're gonna do. It'll be a cliffhanger.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna look at a roster, and when we come back for the next episode, I will lead with it.
Perfect.
And there we go.
All right. We'll see everybody. We'll see everybody next Sunday. Right. Thanks for tuning in.
All right.